Got it.
All right, we made it.
All
Made it
right.
through another week.
Another week of F1 down. Pretty good weekend.
Yeah. I got,
Actually, it was really fun. I had a lot of fun in this weekend.
yeah, I actually have a lot of notes.
Yeah, lots of things. Oh
Oh
my
my
goodness.
goodness.
Yeah. I kind of just kept track of like all the messages that we were sending back and forth because there was
Okay.
like so much stuff happening that I was like, okay, like yes, let me put something for that. Let me put something for that. So
Yeah, I gotta keep track.
yeah, no, like it was pretty eventful. The weekend itself, I would say it wasn't like the most exciting. Like it wasn't like the like 10 out of 10. I would say it was like a 7 out of 10 is what I'd say
Okay.
ultimately. But a lot did happen. That doesn't mean it was all exciting. It just a lot did happen. Um, yeah, so I guess we can get started. We can go from the beginning of the weekend. First of all, I'll admit that I was wrong on my predictions.
What were your predictions again?
So I said that I thought that Ferrari was gonna get a 1-2 with Carlos Sainz on top. Now, ultimately, that seemed not to have been the case. Uh, but I did say Mercedes
On the
podium.
podium?
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
and I said Russell. I was towards Russell. So that was
Oh,
good.
okay.
Yeah. I think
We
you I
need
think
to
your
write
your mic
what?
is a little loud, but I don't know, maybe it's just me. It seems like your mic's a little loud.
There.
Okay. I think that's better.
Okay. Uh, okay, so I have like a way to do the podcast like this time so we can go throughout the whole thing and we can start like from the beginning of the weekend. I don't think we should include any practice. I don't think anything uh, worth noting happened in practice besides Vettel crashing, I
Federal
guess.
crashing, yeah, that's like the only thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, the one thing is they took out the fourth
The
DRS zone. Yeah.
Yeah, which we in last week we were still like that's probably the most dangerous one, and that because like the turn into I believe that's now turn 10 or something, or it's 9. It's just too fast. I was like you coming in trying to pass somebody there, and it's like it's gonna end up poorly. And a lot of people turn out during the weekend, even without the DRS on, try to make a pass there, and like it was pretty dangerous. They couldn't make it. Like they were like
Yep.
going off the road. Multiple people doing the same thing. So no, I think that it was the right call, and I mean a little bummed out. It would have been more fun, but it was kind of dangerous.
Yeah. So with that, we can start actually on the first topic, and we can get back to the DRS topic in a little bit.
Okay.
Gotta do 1 second here. So the first topic is actually something that happened in Q1, which is Lance Stroll and Nicholas Latifi crashing. I think that's the first thing on Q1 that happened.
Yep.
And what are your thoughts on that? Like when you first saw the accident, what did you think happened? Did you blame anybody in particular?
I I mean, well, we can start the conversation on Lance Stroll, but we can also do it for later. But he's got a history of not looking in his mirrors. But when it first happened, I was like, I thought it was Latifi's fault
I
because I
thought it
was
was
like,
Latifi's fault as well.
I was like, what is he doing? Like he slowed down, let Stroll pass, and then like try to accelerate out of nowhere, and crash. Afterwards, and after the
I think
stewards,
when they first showed the footage, it didn't seem like a Stroll veered into the right. It isn't until like they slow it down that you just see a Stroll like just like whoop,
yeah, out of nowhere.
yeah, out of nowhere, and you're like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, a Stroll just fooling, just he wasn't paying attention.
yeah, he was but this is the thing. Okay, so he's in a warm-up lap, right? And
They
like
were both in a warm up lap
right,
or in a cool down, whatever.
and behind him, I guess there was somebody also that was coming along. So they were like move it out of the way. So if you're like cooling down or on a prep lap, you're probably looking at your steering wheel because you're like chilling, right? Like you're not like actively like looking, just like you just move to the side when somebody tells you to move to the side. It is a little baffling to me that Latifi will want to come on the inside. I I mean I know the stewards give the penalty to Stroll, but I don't think it was right. I actually don't think it was Stroll's fault because like
Ooh,
he
controversial.
I guess it's controversial. I really don't think it is because I think he kind of like move a little to the right and then Latifi like he was just going too fast. Like what is he what is Latifi doing? And
Yeah, Latifi did go on the inside, which is like a little, it's a little weird. Like, hey, he just overtook me.
yeah,
He's towards the right hand side of the track.
yeah.
So I'm gonna go even farther right, is what Latifi's thinking.
And there was
So
barely a gap there to begin with, and there was a car coming behind them. So it's like, if there's a car coming behind you, and you're trying to like make way, and the driver in front might be also making way. I mean, I guess the stewards think that like Stroll didn't have to do that, but to me it seemed like it was like Latifi did something out of nowhere, and he was going really fast. And of that, Stroll didn't even have time to do anything. And Stroll just moved and boom, just like
yeah,
the
I
guy
mean,
the
so
guy
the
just went off.
reasoning is like, if you're the car in front and you're the one slowing down, you should be paying attention to your mirrors if you have cars behind you.
Yeah,
Like, even if the team is telling you, hey, there's a car coming behind, it's like you just overtook a car and then you slow down. So that car might want to overtake you again, and then you're not paying attention.
yeah,
I think Stroll was perhaps paying attention to the Alfa Romeo that was probably coming behind,
yeah.
and just forgot about Latifi. He's like, oh yeah, I overtook Latifi. There's no way that Latifi is gonna overtake me back. And he just like wasn't paying attention. And then like, oh, Latifi, oh, we just crashed.
Mhm.
So it is like, I agree that maybe Latifi's fault. Like, hey, you shouldn't go on the inside. Like it's like a little weird that Stroll is actually making room on the left hand side of the track so cars can overtake him, and then Latifi decided to go on the right hand
And
side, like of Stroll. But then again,
yeah,
even though that's weird, it's up to the car in front to be paying attention to the cars behind you. So that's why, like, I think, I don't know, percentage wise, what would you rate it? I think it's like 80% Stroll's fault.
oh really,
Yeah.
80%? No, no way. I'm gonna put 60% on Latifi. And I think I will say this. I think the reason,
You
I mean,
think
I
it's
know,
60 Latifi's fault, 60% on Latifi?
yes, 60%,
Okay.
40% Stroll. And I'll say that like the ruling of the FIA on this, I think was based more, and I don't know if they say this formally or not, but I think in order to make it fair to the teams, it was more based on the amount of damage that the Williams received afterwards, because the Williams got fucked up. Like it was total like afterwards, like the back wing, the old like the
Yeah.
suspension, everything was fucked. Whereas the no, the what's it called?
Aston Martin.
Yeah, as the Aston Martin, just like literally just broke the front suspension, and it's like whatever, that they replace it's like their candy. Uh, so so like no, I think that's the reason why it was harsher on Stroll and why they blamed it on him.
Yeah.
Did he receive any license points for that?
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah.
It's unfortunate. Because I honestly, I mean, yes, Stroll's got a history of not looking at his
Yeah.
mirrors. Yes, we have a whole playlist on that now.
Yeah. So for those that are listening, we made a playlist of like 10 different crashes that Lance Stroll has had since he joined Formula One,
Yeah,
where he has turned into cars because he hasn't been looking in his mirrors.
yeah.
Like, this is not like a one-off event. He's just known, and we said it on the last podcast.
Mhm,
It's like, hey,
mhm.
this guy is
Yeah.
like, he just doesn't look at the mirrors, and then people end up crashing onto him, and then they get the penalty and he doesn't. And I'm like, I don't know, like, oh, if a car just turns into you, like, they don't get a penalty and I do. It's like, how does that make any sense? And I was complaining about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this guy specifically has a lot of, like, a record of doing this.
Yeah.
And then I went and looked back, and then I'm like, look at all of these instances.
Yes.
I looked at like Lance Stroll crashes, and then like I started analyzing all of them, and I'm like, look, this guy just does the
It's
same
always the
thing.
same thing. Every
Yeah.
time that he crashes is like the same thing.
He just turns into somebody, or well, the other one is like he wrecks the car and he crashes on his own. But
Yeah.
like every time that he crashes like with another driver, is him turning into them.
Yeah.
10 times. That's not an anomaly. It's like he just does it.
I know that we didn't put this in a compilation, and maybe we could talk about it afterwards. But there was also that one in Canada when he crashed into Harley back in the day.
Brandon Harley. Yeah, but I think like on that one, like
That
at the
one-
beginning, I
That
don't
one
know.
is like they were like this, but like he actually did close in on him. Like it was
Like,
kind of
yeah,
similar.
he went on that. Yeah, I didn't put it on the compilation because I
Yeah,
feel like it could be like 50-50. Like they were coming in too fast, and then he opened up the car and not expecting Harley to be there.
yeah,
But yeah, I didn't put it in the compilation for that reason, but I do remember that crash.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was like one
So
of the first ones that came to mind.
that's the only time that I can think of Scroll like crashing out. That like it wasn't like like just him not looking in the mirror, you know.
Yeah.
But but yeah, no, I mean yeah. That's my verdict on that. I say 60% Latifi and 40% Stroll, but I think it's just so much more costly for Williams, who already like had like two crashes last weekend, and now Latifi's crashing again. I was like, bro, at least you gotta be more careful. Like, come on, like what are you doing? Like
Which I
I
think,
mean,
like for Latifi specifically, I think he was so slow this weekend. They
yeah,
probably told him like, "Dude, we don't care if you finish last. Just bring the
just,
car home."
just bring the
Yeah.
car. Yeah, like that's all we need you to do at this point.
Yeah,
um,
which we can go a little bit into that, like
yeah, we can go into that a little bit later.
parentheses. Like right now, it's like I think that uh, we talked about it also. Like the point system in Formula One makes no sense because why would Williams finish a race with Latifi?
Yeah,
It's like, hey, like we're gonna end last. He's like 30 seconds behind the next guy over. Like he's not gonna be in the points. Just like let's retire the car. Let's
yeah.
save the engine. I don't know why they don't do that. I also
There,
like
there may actually be some rules about that from the FIA that you can't just like quit in the middle of a race
quit. Yeah,
every
we're gonna
race.
have to look that up.
Yeah,
Like why don't drivers just like, oh, I'm not in the top 10 and I'm not gonna end there anytime soon. Let's just retire. I know
yeah,
that maybe the teams can gather data, but it's
yeah.
like, is the data worth it when like the guy is like running last 30 seconds behind the next guy? Like he's just so
Yeah.
slow. Is any data of that worth it? But maybe I'm
I
assuming
mean, the,
it
the
is.
other
But
the other reason might be just to like for accidents. Like if there's an accident and you think that like, your guy can benefit, maybe. But like if it's like lap like 45 and like you guys on like 18th, like he's not gonna score any points. I mean, like there's no safety car incident that like is gonna make everybody pit in front of him and give him like seventh or something. It's just not gonna happen. So and even then it would just be incredibly unlikely. So you might as well just retire the car. So yeah, there must be some sort of rule on that we're just not aware of.
yeah,
That like
maybe the
white teams can
sponsors also
finish.
pressure the cars into like, hey, you
Maybe
need to be out there.
yeah,
Why are we sponsoring a car that like
that like doesn't
retires?
finish. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So anyway, but yeah, the whole Stroll thing, I'm not a fan of Stroll. I'm not a fan of Latifi either. How convenient that they're both Canadian. I don't want to sound like xenophobic against Canadians, but for some reason they are not good. Even
I
though I
mean,
mean they
I
have
can say
a
that about all Canadians.
Jacques
Yeah,
Villeneuve, Jacques
Villeneuve. Yeah,
like he world champion. So there's
right.
nothing specific. Like I think Canadians can be really good drivers. Just specifically these two
Yeah,
are just like at the bottom of the of all of Formula One.
yeah. At the moment, that's it's unfortunate. I don't know if it has to do with them being Canadian specifically.
No, I know that's just that they just happen to be
They
Canadian, and
happen to be
also they
Canadian.
both happen to be like
Yeah,
the drivers we criticize the most.
yeah. I mean, I don't know, but they're actually not the worst. I mean, I think Latifi this year he's just been more prone to crashing, and Stroll in previous years he's been fast enough that he deserves to be in Formula One, and he's not been the slowest. Like in previous years you had Giovinazzi,
Well,
or
I
you
thought Giovinazzi
had
was terrible. Oh, Mazepin last year.
Mazepin.
Uh,
Mazepin was terrible in previous. So Harley back in the day, or Sirotkin.
oh, Sergio Sirotkin was also pretty bad.
Yeah. Oh, so he's never been that bad. He's always been kind of there. It's
Oh,
just like
Latifi.
no, Stroll.
Yeah,
Stroll has
Stroll.
always
Yeah,
been
Stroll has
okay.
always been there. He has a good race pace. I
Race
think
pace is good. Yeah.
his qualifying is the part that he doesn't do very good on.
Yeah.
But his race
He
pace
always
is
struggled
pretty
with that.
decent. Yeah.
Mhm.
And well, now it's just that he also doesn't have like a good like awareness around his car, which we like been noticing.
But okay, so
But
since
the other one is Latifi. Well,
well,
okay, what were you gonna say?
no, since we're just talking about Stroll, I gotta say that
Yes,
like
this is the Stroll moment.
I reviewed all the footage. I've seen all 10 videos. I don't think it's his fault. I honestly, in like maybe in like 80% of those, I don't think he's in the wrong. I'll say that not that it's not his fault, because you can always prevent a crash. I feel like you can always give him more
Mhm.
space, but I don't think he was wrong necessarily in closing the door in a lot of those. I think he has this habit of like he squares the corners too much. Like he goes deep and then like comes in like very into the apex to get like a good exit. I think that's generally what he does, and a lot of drivers interpret that as like there's a space for me. He left the door open. I'm gonna get my car in there. But if you see the footage of all of those crashes, in my opinion, the car behind is never far enough ahead. They always try to like launch on him, but they're never far enough ahead to the point that I have to say like Stroll didn't have that corner. And on all of those, I think the rule is clear, and I kind of support the rule of like if your car is not even like next to the other car, like the other car doesn't have to yield to you. It makes things
Mhm.
very simple for me. And like in a lot of those crashes, I just don't think there was a few that I think that I could probably go back and see exactly which ones they were. That I
What do
was
you
like,
think of
okay,
the Verstappen stroll in Portugal?
an example. Well, actually, they weren't racing, but I don't think it was his fault. I think it was Verstappen's fault. Because like, what's Verstappen doing? He's just sitting on the guy in the back of his car. Stroll is obviously not slowing down, and he's just. I mean, he's gonna turn in, but like if Verstappen wasn't making an attempt to pass him, and he wasn't even on the side, it is it is not necessarily the right thing to crash your car in practice like that. But if we're talking about racing, he doesn't have to yield. so, so there is something to say about the code that drivers have, the unspoken code that like maybe you should just give more space to the guy in training, whatever. But I also don't know what Verstappen was doing. At best, I give it
He did
50
he
50.
did push. What about the in the race in Australia just now when he pushed Valtteri off the road?
Was that Stroll? I
Yeah,
thought it
that was
was
Stroll.
okay. I thought for some reason I thought it was one of the Alpha Taurs. Um, I thought it was fine. It was a little much, but fine. Like,
Yeah, I think it's turning that area. Like, was that a penalty? I could see an argument for both it being a penalty and both not being a penalty.
yeah,
I think it was just like very hard racing.
he
It's
was
like,
he
oh.
was trying hard to hold on to that spot at the end there.
And the other one, since we're on the bandwagon of Stroll criticism at the moment, everything is Strolled now.
Yeah, this is a stroll time, baby.
It's Stroll time.
The only
How
show
about
that's
the
ever
him?
gonna do this.
How about the him weaving in the main straight?
I don't know, man. Because we've talked about weaving, and I guess now all of a sudden, because he's like the 14th place. If Charles Leclerc was doing that, nothing
If
happens.
Max Verstappen does it
Ma-
for the
eh,
championship,
Nothing happens. But all of a sudden now, and we've been saying this, he's not a main contender. He's fighting for maybe like a point or two. They don't give a fuck. They're gonna be like, no, that's a penalty. It's so clear now. Like you're not supposed to weave. But oh, if the championship leader is doing it on the last lap of the last race, that's not that can we cannot touch that. The entertainment is it's
Mhm.
too good, right? So no, I don't know if you're gonna stay
I
consistent with the rules.
yeah.
I don't think so. Maybe a warning. Although I think they might have given him a warning. But no. No. I would say it's not quite right if you see the previous history of those type of
Yeah, I'm
things.
not I'm not a fan of the weaving. How about like that question for you? Like if people weave, like, hey, it's not consistent, like sometimes they give penalties, sometimes they don't. But overall, do you think that weaving like that should be allowed?
No, no, it should. I
It,
I think
it
there's
you cannot race a guy that is like just moving across the entire track in front of you.
yeah,
Uh, so it's dangerous.
like
So I do
I
agree that you shouldn't be allowed to do that.
I think you get some amount of movement, but like very limited, and like it's kind of dangerous. And like it will only take one event in which like a driver is doing that for somebody to like tap them in the wheel and like them go flying off in a straight like at like 300 miles an hour. Like it's very difficult. And the other thing, it just doesn't feel fun. It feels like the guy ahead is trying to disrupt like the DRS effect. And like um I don't know, I don't like that. It's not, I don't know. It's not. It doesn't feel like the correct record racing. type of racing that I want to see. I don't want to see like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
it's kind of like a cheap trick in my opinion to stay ahead because it's difficult to pass somebody that's weaving that much.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to talk about now that just to finish up the Stroll info
Yeah,
is
sure.
that eventually, if drivers get up to 12 penalty points, they're supposed to get one race ban.
Oh,
Now that
what's
has
it?
not. I think he's at 8 at the moment.
Okay.
And it has to be 12 penalty points within a 1 year, like a 12-month period of time,
Yeah,
right?
they
So
delete after that.
after every time like one of the penalty points gets 12 months being there, it just gets stricken off the record.
Yeah.
So Stroll is at 8. I don't know if he's the one that has the most. I think he is. But that's like a rule that was introduced recently in like modern Formula One
Mhm.
that as of now it hasn't happened.
Nobody's
People
racking up them.
haven't gotten 12 penalty points. um, I also don't know why they chose 12. I don't know where that number comes from. It's also like, hey, like
Arbitrary
they say like, oh, it's 12 penalty points for whatever reason.
for whatever
uh,
reason. Yeah, I don't know. I guess if I had to guess, I'll give him the chance of doubt, the benefit of the doubt. They probably said like, what's the hardest penalty that we have? And I don't know. It's probably like three points on your license or
I think
something.
it's 2 points. 2 points.
There's no 3 points.
I know.
And
As
they
far as
said
I know,
like,
there's no.
listen, if you do 6 of those through like for like an entire season, then you get a race ban. And it is kind of like, why 6? But but that's the best I can do.
Yeah. Best I can
uh,
do is do that explanation.
is that explanation of like they think that 6 penalties
But
is the right amount, because
do you
maybe it's
think
because it's rare to get
I,
6.
I kinda I want to see somebody getting a race ban. I really want to see, but I highly doubt that the FIA would ever let that happen.
like enforce it,
Yeah.
or
Like
or
people are
like
like, ooh,
give the
that
last.
driver is getting to 12 points close. It's like they're gonna be a little bit more lenient with that driver. They
Yeah,
don't like and it feels like, why? Like, we all signed up for the rules. I don't want leniency. I just want like something concrete. And this has always been a criticism since the beginning of this podcast. Like from all the episodes before, is like the rules are not consistent.
yeah,
They're lenient towards somebody, they're strict towards the others.
yeah.
So I do want to see that race ban because I want Formula One to have that precedent. It's like the rules are more important than the sport
I mean, I guess I can see that, but if we don't reach to
or
the
than
point
the
where
entertainment.
I like to, well, I mean, I guess I like to see a race ban for like an incident that's bad enough that like you deliberately took a driver out or something like that. I guess I would
Mhm.
like to see that, because that also sets a precedent. But I don't know. I mean, they put the rules into place. I feel like there's been a couple of scary moments where like some drivers have gotten close, but not quite getting there. I think Norris got kind of close. I think Grosjean got kind of close, but they never got the race ban. So yes, it will be interesting, but I'm not like actively. I think because I think it is a kind of a harsh penalty, so they're trying not to let it get. And also it's kind of hard to know when they do and they don't make the ruling for like the license points. So it's gonna they're keeping it like on the down low a little bit. It's hard to judge, but I don't know. I mean I'm not like committed to the idea of like give somebody a race ban just because, or like not because
No,
just because, but because they deserve it or something like that.
yeah, I want a race ban because somebody deserves the race ban,
Yeah.
and like
Hmm.
because those were the rules people signed up for.
Yeah.
So as long as like the rules are consistent, that's all you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Anyways,
Anyways,
I guess that's it
that's the stroll.
for the stroll hour. Again, I think I have a, after we put a whole, or after you put a whole playlist together of like him crashing, it is kind of interesting that I still think that like it's not all of his fault, and that like he actually still deserves to be in Formula One somewhat.
I think he still deserves to be in Formula One. I just think he has just that. He just turns in without caring about who's on the inside of him.
Yeah.
And I think like, and then the people that he turns into are the ones that get penalties, and he
Mhm.
doesn't. So that's the fact that like that's the thing I have an issue with.
I think, yeah,
So
the one with Lando Norris. where
There are two with Lando Norris. One in Spain and one in Portugal.
in the one in Portugal, where like lap two, that one was like pretty clearly him. Like I don't know what he was doing. Um, and I agree with like Lando Norris's commentary there.
He
uh,
apologized at the end of the race, but
for saying that, yeah,
yeah.
but I think it was still Stroll's fault. What he did, but in any case,
In any
yes,
case,
I think we can call it on Stroll for now.
all right,
You know,
let's
we'll
go
we'll,
there.
we'll keep up with this. We'll maybe add more to the playlist as the year goes along.
Okay, with that, the next topic of the weekend,
Uh-huh.
it is Fernando Alonso.
Fernando Alonso, yes, that is the next, I guess, big thing that happened in qualifying.
Yeah, he crashed. Tell me, I don't know. What do you want to describe here?
I don't know. So I saw the replay, and I guess there's supposed to be a noise or something that alerts you to like, oh, like he lost like some hydraulic and like there was a glitch, so he couldn't. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. I honestly think he was coming in hot into that turn, and like, and this is just pure speculation according to how I play the video game. But if you come in too hot and your engine is still pretty high up, you, your car sometimes doesn't let you gear down.
Yeah,
So
and
so
that's
I
to protect the engine.
exactly. So I think that as he was coming in, he just came in too hard and he assumed that he maybe could go one more gear down, and the gear wasn't there. Like the gearbox couldn't do that. And so they said that he said it was a hydraulic mistake, and maybe that's the noise that you hear. But to me, it seemed like he clipped the grass. He clipped the grass right before it, and then he went and then he went into the turn. So I think he kind of just like he's pulling that out and saying that like that was the excuse because like he crashed the
Really?
car and lost
I
like
mean, the
the
team did
qualifying
say
lap.
that the team said that the car, there's like a part in the car. I don't know what it's called. It's like I don't know, a gasket, if that's what it's called,
Okay.
for the oil pressure, and that like it's like a thing that costs like $3 in the store. Like it's something very cheap,
Okay.
and that like that just got threaded while like
Mm,
he was revving down, and like that thing spilled and the oil thing happened, and then just the hydraulic whole thing happened for the engine.
okay.
So
It seems I don't know. It seems just a little convenient that it just happened in that one turn after Alonso cleared the ground, and that it's never
I
happened
mean,
before, and it's
when
never
I
happened like
when
since.
I first saw the video, assuming that the like without seeing the or without listening to the Alonso radio, I did think
Mhm.
like, oh, he came in too hot.
Yeah.
Like just if Fernando doesn't say like, oh, the hydraulics, like if there's no radio communication coming in, I'm like, oh, he went in too hot.
Yeah.
But then like when he says it, it's like it would make sense. And like part of me believes in it. It's like it's Fernando Alonso. The dude is like a really good driver that I don't think he would be the kind of driver that would make that mistake. Right. So
Yes.
when he says like, hey, there's something wrong with the car, I believe like there's something wrong with the car. You know?
Mhm.
So that's why like yeah, he's coming in too hot, but then it's like, oh, it's because the car didn't slow down for X, Y, or Z reason. I believe him.
Yeah. I
Now,
mean,
am I biased because of that? Maybe a little bit, but like
uh,
then again, that's the reputation that he has. So therefore, I can only trust that what he's saying is true. Like if I don't know, if Latifi or Stroll were to say that, I'm like, dude, you don't know what you're talking about.
yes, yes. I mean, it's probably true. Like the reality is that it's probably true. It just seemed very, very, very convenient that it happened when he wasn't like the best lap at one of the most trickiest turns. When he seemed like he clipped the grass, when he seemed like he was actually going pretty hard, whether he geared down or not. Uh, yes, I'll say sure, sure. Like it was
What do you
a
think he could
mechanical
have
mistake.
qualified as?
Actually, I was seeing the times. It looked like he was going faster than Leclerc at that point.
Yes,
I don't
I think he
know.
could have gotten provisional pole on that lap,
Yeah,
but I don't know if he could have gotten pole because the Leclerc lap for pole position was really good.
it was really. quick.
Uh,
Yeah,
so I don't know if Alonso could have gotten pole overall for the weekend.
I think
At
it could have
least
been
not
like,
with that lap.
yeah, I think it could have been like top three, and knowing that like Sainz at that point, Sainz and Perez might have not done the most optimal laps. I think he could have gotten like three or even second. But Paul, I just don't think so. I don't, I can see that happening. It's just, and nowhere in the weekend it seemed like it was that fast. Like the Alpines, yes, it was like fourth, it was fifth at
I
different
mean, the Alpine
points.
was really fast. I think also Alonso's race was a little bit quite messed up.
Yeah, yeah.
Alonso's race got quite messed up.
I think it had to do with the timing of the safety car again. It kind of like
Yeah,
similar to what happened to Magnussen on Bahrain,
and no,
even though he was
on
Australia.
Saudi Arabia.
Oh, on Saudi Arabia. Yes, yes, yes. Uh, but um, but no, I mean, it happened. It also happened to Albon, but he was able to manage it. But I guess we can get into the race now if you want.
Yeah, so that's the Alonso topic. So
uh,
all right, so now we're going into the race.
yes,
The first topic of the race that I have is obviously the race start. We have Leclerc starting first.
yes,
Obviously, I think the main first topic that comes from the beginning of the race is Carlos Sainz.
yes, and
Um,
it does up to Paul or to qualifying as well, which
yeah,
is like my man struggled the entire weekend. Like
yeah.
he couldn't get off the ground. Like he's already like in the first two races he was already struggling with the car trying to get it under control, but like this time even the car was finding him. Like
So this is the Carlos Sainz moment. Let it all out.
yeah, the Carlos Sainz hour. Now, in your opinion, I want to hear what you have to say first. How much of the blame do you put on the car, the team, the preparation, and how much do you put on Sainz as a driver?
Okay, so I'm gonna give you some context for Carlos Sainz for this weekend,
Okay,
in case you didn't know, and then maybe we can take that into account.
all right.
Obviously, he was gonna qualify. I don't know if he could have gotten pole position, but I think he could have qualified better than ninth.
Mhm.
But then obviously we had the Alonso crash. Therefore, there was a red flag, and as soon as he was crossing the finish line, so he couldn't get that lap in. Then so that was unfortunate for him. Also, when on his next lap, when he was gonna finally try to get a good lap, he made a mistake in the car,
Mhm.
and then he had to abort the lap.
Yeah,
So
but I think that partially had to do with the fact that like there was some issue in the pits and they had to send him out quickly, and he, in order
yes,
to make it on time, he couldn't warm up the tires. But go
yep.
on.
So they sent him out onto track like a little bit later. He didn't have time to warm up the track, the tires, and then during his lap he also made a mistake. So it's just like things that end up piling up.
Mhm.
And then also at the beginning of the race, his steering wheel wasn't working. I don't know if you knew that. So they had to change
Yeah,
his
they they they,
his
they
steering
changed it.
wheel,
Yeah,
and the new
right
steering
before.
wheel didn't have the settings for his car.
Oh,
So he was racing with like the incorrect settings on the steering wheel. So that also piled up because then the steering wheel kind of doesn't respond as he's been like
like he's used
driving
to.
it the whole weekend.
Yeah.
And so eventually he makes the mistake.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
I
sorry, I was
Go
gonna say
ahead.
about the steering wheel because especially you like the drivers get to customize pretty much everything in the wheel. They can choose where the buttons are and like if you have a favorite setting, like how you like do the brake bias and stuff. Like they customize it that way. So not having that, very inconvenient. Go on.
Yes. So it's like unfortunate events kept happening for Carlos Sainz, the red flag, the Ferrari crew sending him late, him making a mistake, the steering wheel,
Yeah.
and also his start was awful.
Hmm.
Like at the beginning of the race, so he's like also falling behind. You
Which
could
part
say
of
that it was part of the steering wheel
yeah.
issue.
Hmm.
So it's like something happens, and then that goes bad on the next thing because the first thing happened, and it's just like this thing just piling up, one mistake into the next mistake, into the next unfortunate event, into the next unfortunate event.
Yeah.
And I think he was already, I don't know, tilted. Also, he puts a lot of pressure on himself
to be better.
to beat Leclerc, to really be the Ferrari like number one guy. And I think he was just like trying too hard, and he made that mistake and just took
Yeah.
himself out of the race.
Which, I think when he races like well, and he tends to be a very consistent driver.
Yes.
And when he races well, he can beat Leclerc in some weekends. There are some weekends where Leclerc is not like 100%. And in the past, I mean, that's kind of why he ended up with more points at the end. Even though I would argue that Abu Dhabi, the last race was messed up, and like there were a couple
Yep.
of incidents with the safety car, blah blah blah. But he is good if he races well, if he has that time to
Yeah, he's a really consistent, like a solid driver. I don't
Mhm.
think he's like the fastest driver, but
No.
like the thing that you always think when you look at Carlos Sainz is that he's a really solid, consistent driver.
Yeah.
So if you bring him in, he's just meant to do that consistent job. He's not supposed to be the superstar, but if he's so consistent that he ends up being, that's a bonus for him.
Yeah.
But he really wants to be, I feel like he really wants to be. And like when you see him on the interviews, he's just so angry with himself all the time. He's upset. Like I think on previous years, he's been more charismatic, more like, yeah, I'm good. Hey, we're trying our best. And he happens to be like a really chill guy. But like now every interview, he's just angry.
Yeah.
So I think like that pressure, and I don't think it's the outside world putting this pressure on him. I think it's him putting
Himself,
that pressure on
yeah.
himself. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I just think he needs to just calm down. You're a
Yeah.
good driver. Just you
It's
don't
a
need
long
to.
it's a long season too, like
Yes.
a couple of bad races do happen. And it obviously looks like Leclerc immediately just has more of a handle of the car. Like, and I've always said this even before the season started, that like Leclerc is just a very naturally gifted driver. Like, you put him in any car and he'll drive the shit out of it.
Yep.
Kind of like Verstappen, and maybe like a few others. Sainz needs some time to get used to the car. Like, he comes from McLaren, different car. I know this is his second season on Ferrari, but like, it's still kind of
But
new.
this is still a new car and everything.
It's,
No?
it's still a new team, and you gotta get used to it before you can drive it on the edge, on
I
the
mean, yeah,
limit.
you do have drivers like Leclerc that as soon as he came into Ferrari, he could just drive the car.
Yeah, like on the second weekend, he was already winning like Bahrain until
Yep.
that engine thing. Yeah. Um, so yeah. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of things. Eventually, you'll catch up to Leclerc, and actually, once you catch up to Leclerc, like Carlos Sainz is consistently able to drive the car on the limit. Like, he is good enough to do that. He just needs to give himself some time to get there, to get the car in position, and not be too impatient. And that's what happened. After the start of the race, he just got super
And yeah,
impatient.
and that's what happens with him every time. Like I think when he was also in McLaren,
Mhm.
well, he was solid when Norris first came in, but then like in the last season of McLaren, Norris came in really strong,
Yeah.
and then Carlos was like a little here and there, and then eventually he got it like a good solid grasp of the car, and then he started beating Norris
Yeah.
towards the end of the season. He's just like really consistent.
Mhm.
So I think this time, like he's not following his own pattern. He's trying to like really be the superstar, and I'm like, you can be a superstar in your own way.
I mean, the thing is that like he kind of is in some way. I mean, he's like a success story. Like, nobody thought of him being as this fast. Like, this guy from Spain. But like, slowly he made his way up from like Toro Rosso to McLaren, and then I don't know, to Renault, to McLaren, and now to
To
Ferrari. Like,
Ferrari, yep.
he's proving himself to be really fast. He's just, and I think he will come down a little bit,
He's
and like,
following the Fernando Alonso
path.
game plan. So
Yeah.
Renault,
Yeah.
Renault into McLaren
Mhm.
into Ferrari.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think he's good enough. He's good enough to be there, and by the end of the season, I suspect that he'll be able to have some wins under his belt.
So, okay, question then for you. Do you think he'll be able to fight for the world championship this
At this
year?
at this point, I don't know, because like Leclerc is pulling so far ahead as it is. Uh, but I think him win a few races at some point might put like a realistic target on that. As of the moment, I'm gonna say it's unlikely. It's unlikely, not impossible, just unlikely. Because Leclerc,
What's the
you have
percentage that you think you give him at
uh,
this point?
I don't know, of winning the championship,
Yeah,
probably under 5%. Just
under
because,
5%.
yeah, just because Verstappen's there, Russell's there, you're gonna have to deal with Leclerc the entire year, and and it's not like Leclerc really goes like crashes out a lot either. I mean, it happens, but not
Mhm.
like a bunch of times. So I don't know. At this point, it's hard to tell. I mean, like Leclerc has already got like a whole 20, like 30 something points difference between him and the second place, which is Russell. So it's hard to say. No, it's not to say that Leclerc has it in the bag. It's too early for that. There's too many races also this year. But I see it less likely, and I just give the percentages to other people. I give like Leclerc at this point like 55% chance of winning, and like Verstappen like 30 or 35, and then other people
Yeah.
like I don't know, So it's
Okay.
just like the 5% is still within Sainz somewhere.
Okay.
All right. So that
All
was the
right.
first thing. So that was science, but I guess
Yeah.
we can now talk about any other things.
Yeah. Next topic that I have, I don't know if you want to talk about it right now, is driver of the day was
Oh,
Charles Leclerc.
yeah, easily.
Obviously, he got pole position. We can get it just out of the way because I think, I
Oh,
mean, I go
actually,
ahead.
since you mentioned this, and since you love complaints, this is something that I'll complain about every single weekend. Is the driver of the day
You
voting?
want to talk about it on the complaints, complaint section?
Fine. I mean, fine. We can wait until then, but whatever. It is a complaint of mine. Anyways, we'll get to it.
So Charles Leclerc, I just want to talk about him because obviously we're doing the contrast between Carlos Sainz and the other Ferrari team member, which is Charles Leclerc.
Yes,
So for Charles specifically, what do you think of his weekend?
Charles. Of course. I mean, of course, he gets the legendary 5 out of 5. I mean, it was a spectacular. It's not like he had to show everything off, right? Like he didn't have to do everything. And there was a chance where like he messed up one of the race car start, safety car start.
Safety cars, yeah.
But aside from that, I mean, that was like the tiniest thing that I saw. Everything else, he drove perfectly. I mean, he was fast. I think he was faster than at least one of the testing. He got pole position. He got the fastest lap. He led every lap, and then he won the race. I mean, like you can't ask for anything better out of your driver.
Mhm.
And he got to stave off Verstappen the entire weekend too. So it's like, I mean, yeah, 10 out of 10 or 5 out of 5.
Yeah. It seems like, when you have like Carlos Sainz, it's like, look where the car can be. And then you
Yeah.
have Leclerc like actually winning the race. You know, at what point in the season with Charles Leclerc, like, how I think since the beginning of the season, we've been saying like, hey, maybe the guy that's going to win the championship this year is going to be Verstappen.
Yeah.
But Leclerc looks really strong.
Yeah.
At what point do we change our mind to being like, this is Leclerc's championships to lose? Is that
Um,
happening now?
I
Is that
think,
like,
I think we're at that point where it's like it looks like he's got a decisive advantage. Like, but I will say it's not for sure yet because we've been in like I know we've been in like some heavy engine circuits, but not really as heavy. And the one like
yeah,
Saudi Arabia was really heavy, and he couldn't win because the car wasn't there. Uh, Bahrain, for some reason, the Ferraris have always been good in Bahrain. I'm not really sure if I understand that, but like in less engine heavy, they're really good in the heavier engine circuits. It's gonna be interesting to see how they perform, like your Imolas, your Silverstones, your Azerbaijans, or Bakus, whatever. It's gonna be interesting how they perform. Until we see like the results of what the Ferrari can do on this, it's just too early to say. And there's generally speaking more heavy engine tracks than there is like curvy tracks. In my experience, that's why Mercedes tends to do well in the championships because they used to be good at those, and now the Red Bulls are good at those, and we haven't gotten to them. So
yeah.
once we get to them and we see the Red Bulls, and I'm sure there's gonna be some Max Verstappen wins somewhere in there. then I'll be able to have a better sense. So probably by the end of the European season, I think we should have like better idea. And if Leclerc is still on top, then we will say like this is his championship to lose. At the moment, even though he's got a decisive advantage and a decisive lead too, where like even if he was to not finish a race and the next guy wins, he's still gonna be in the championship. I it's it I can't just call it. There's too many races, especially like engine heavy races. So yeah, that's what I'll say.
Okay, that's all I got for Leclerc.
All right.
All right.
What's next? Science.
Now we just did science. So
But do you want me to rate him for the weekend?
no, we're not rating any of the guys yet.
Okay.
I think it was just like talking about Charles Leclerc, and the question is like, when is it his championship to lose? But
Okay.
now
Just
we're gonna talk about Mercedes and Hamilton. I mean Mercedes and Red Bull, not Hamilton.
All right.
So obviously in the race, there was a point where Perez pitted, and then Hamilton stayed out, and Hamilton ended up overcutting Perez. I don't know if you remember that. Like Perez was ahead of Hamilton, then he pitted, and then when he came out, Hamilton was in front.
Yep.
And there was a moment there where both the Mercedes and the Red Bull could kind of fight each other. Like the Red Bull the tires started graining before Perez came in, and then it looked like Lewis was gonna be able to overtake him. And then they pitted him. They pitted Perez, so you didn't get to see the Mercedes trying to overtake the Red Bull, which would have been exciting.
Yeah.
And then obviously later on, you get Perez overtaking Lewis Hamilton. Like, you know, it looks like the Mercedes can actually fight, like a little bit. My question is, and this is like something that Christian Horner has said, is like that he prefers to have a fast car that he has to fix than have like a slow car, a slow car that he needs to make faster.
Yeah.
You know,
but a reliable one. Yeah, he said something like that.
So it is now. You can see that Mercedes is ahead of Red Bull in the constructors, even though they have the slower car.
Yeah.
So what's your opinion on this between like the Red Bull car and like, let's say the Mercedes, or you can even say the Ferrari car, which has been quite reliable? Is it really having like a fast car that's not that reliable, like all that good?
I mean, it depends. I think the Red Bulls have always been known for like having reliability issues. For some reason last year they didn't. I get this year they don't have a Honda, right? Like
I mean, it's still a Honda engine, but because they acquired the Honda engine program, so they are still working with Honda like consultant.
Yeah, I mean last year was great for them for that reason, because I think they had a really strong engine and a very reliable one. But in the past they've always had issues with their engines. So in a way I can see why Horner is saying that, because obviously that's his been philosophy for forever. But it looked to me you're giving too much room to the Mercedes. So like the Mercedes now are in a comfortable spot where like even though they are struggling, they're still racking up good points that is gonna pay off later. And if they do come back to win some races, which is very possible, then that's where like you start suffering. So because I think Mercedes on the other hand, they have an incredibly reliable car and it's always been reliable, and they just make it faster. In my opinion, I think that works better. If you just have a car that like finishes races and that you can like keep improving every race, it's better, because losing a race takes so many points out. You know, that's something that we're talking about, the point system. You know, it's like losing a race is very unforgiving for especially cars that don't win the race. So yeah. Anyways.
So with that in mind, I like that you said something, because I had a question for you. Do you think Mercedes are going to be able to win a race this year?
Yes, I mean maybe like, but I mean, we're all kinds of racers win races. You know, like I mean Gasly has won a race. I mean Ocon won a race. So yeah, I think there's a chance. I
How much of a chance right now, percentage wise, do you
oh
give
my
him?
god, everything is like a percentage rise. I don't
Yes,
know.
I want to know because you're the prediction guy.
Maybe like 30%. Maybe like 30%. Like by the end of
Oh,
like
it's kind of low.
yeah, like you roll the die if it comes below a 3 or above a 7.
So there's a stat,
Maybe.
obviously, that Lewis Hamilton, since he joined Formula One, every single year that he's competed in Formula One, he's won a race.
Mhm.
Do you think this will be the year when like that record will be broken?
I give it like 30% chance. Or maybe I actually don't know because it could be also Russell wins, or it could be so it could be like an accidental thing, like they crash in front and like Mercedes get the place, or it could also be that like they just happen to be faster in like a specific track, or that they just get the car back and they're just happen to be the fastest car again. Um, if that's the case, then it's more likely that like Russell and Hamilton might share a couple of things. Uh, I think it's possible that he doesn't finish with any race wins. I think it's unlikely.
Okay.
But I'll say.
And then the other topic that I had in this like Red Bull Mercedes conversation is it looks like Verstappen's car for some reason is a little bit more unreliable than Perez. Just it might be the same, but I think Verstappen just has gotten the worst luck out of the car.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean that his car is more unreliable. I think it's still the same car, just like he has gotten the worst luck. But if Perez keeps like going and racking up points
Yeah.
over the championship, and then Max for some reason just keeps getting unlucky, at what point does Red Bull begin like favoring Perez over Max?
Oh, I don't think they would ever do that. I I think what's happening this year is kind of funky because it appears that every race except for Saudi Arabia. So like on the other two races, seems like Verstappen has struggled finding the right balance. Actually, I guess even in Saudi Arabia, I should take that
Yeah,
back.
because Perez got
Cause
pole.
yeah, because Perez got pole. It seems like Verstappen hasn't gotten like the setups that he wants. He
Mhm.
hasn't been able to get the car where he needs it. But we know that if he gets the car where he needs it, that like the guy can win a championship. He could. I know it doesn't mean that he won last year, but um, like that he's capable of doing that if he has the right car behind him. So I think Red Bull's always gonna favor him. I think is
Even if
it's
Perez is the one fighting for the championship,
yes. I
and
think it's
like Verstappen is just out
yes.
of contention, they're still
Yeah,
gonna favor Verstappen.
I think for Perez, it's always gonna be like understand the car as is. However, Verstappen wants it, you gotta understand it, and then get good at it. And I think that's what's happening. I mean, Perez now kind of understands the car. Maybe this year's car is a little bit more neutral than the usual that was completely oriented towards Verstappen, and he can drive it better, or he can drive it more reliably. Can get the setups more intuitively. So
I think Perez is doing the role that like Carlos Sainz needs to be doing
yeah,
in Ferrari.
and that Bottas was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, like just like get a good car, like
Yeah,
understand the setup and be there every race so you can fight for like the best
yeah.
spot possible.
Just put some pressure on the cars ahead. Don't let them pit. I mean, like you are fast, but maybe you're not the fastest guy, but you are fast, and you could win races, and in the right conditions, even fight for the championship.
So,
So
do you think, like I said, just to clarify for anybody listening out there, if like what I heard is correct,
okay,
Perez, like no, Verstappen is fully out of contention for the championship. And this hypothetical. This is a hypothetical. We're not saying that Verstappen is completely out of the championship right
okay,
now. We're
mhm,
just saying like later through on the season, Verstappen is fully out of the championship for reliability issues or whatever, and he can no longer mathematically win the championship. But
yeah,
Perez can.
mhm,
He will be able to in this
okay,
hypothetical scenario.
all right.
Do you think that Red Bull at that point will favor Perez over Verstappen?
Yeah. I mean, they probably won't favor the construction or the design of the car around him, but yeah, I mean, they'll certainly. I think at that point, obviously, that
But
they'll
like the
probably
race, like what the race strategy will be on favor of Perez.
yes. Well,
And do you do you think that Verstappen will do for Perez what Perez did for Verstappen last
No,
year?
no, there's no way. I mean, maybe. I I guess he could. I could see Verstappen doing that because if you're out of contention, I mean, but this is so unlikely. But if like Verstappen is out of contention and Perez happens to be in contention, I think Verstappen would probably slow the cars behind him and stuff. I don't know if he would just let him pass every single time. But he might because Perez did that, and there's no reason why Verstappen shouldn't do that or wouldn't do it. Like he's not a bad driver in that way. There's another in other ways where like Verstappen is kind of dirty, but not in that sense. I would think
You
that
don't
like
think so?
that's even too far for him.
You don't think that the ego of Verstappen would get to him?
No, 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 no,
Yeah,
no.
I also don't think so. I think that it could, but I'm more on the leaning towards the side that like I think Verstappen will appreciate what Perez did for him last year, and he would do the same for Perez if
Yeah,
he was in a similar position.
right.
Uh, so okay, just wanted to know your opinion on that.
No, I mean it's a good question, but I think I don't know. It's a very hypothetical.
Yes,
Like
just putting pressure here, talking
yeah.
about the important points, because like it might happen, and then we'll be like, "Oh, we talked about this."
I see. We're trying to predict the future here.
Well, so far on the podcast that we've been talking about, we talked about like the Australian, like, hey, this is a dangerous thing over here, and
And they
then
change it.
they changed it. We talked about Lance Stroll not looking into his mirrors, and
What
then
happened?
like it happened.
It's
So like, there's a couple of things that like we see like, hey, if this happens, like this is a thing, you know?
yeah. To me, and I guess to us, it's like glaring when like the things that like the drivers are doing that are like wrong. It's like easy for me to be like, oh yeah, I mean that he does that consistently bad, and because we pay attention to the sport, so it's like
Yep.
yeah, I feel like we can see some patterns, and every now and then we get it right.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. So we
Yeah,
haven't
but
gotten too
so
much into. Go ahead.
no, I mean we're about halfway there.
Okay. Yeah, but we gotta wrap up the race. We gotta.
Yes. So I think the last thing to talk about the race
Okay.
is the second safety car, which was caused by Sebastian Vettel crashing. So
Yeah.
1 second.
All right.
So this is the Sebastian Vettel hour now.
Oh my goodness! Everybody's getting an episode, but I guess it makes sense. It was a very like drivers that you could pick out as like you did something wrong or something's going on. I feel so bad for Vettel. He just hasn't had any race time with that car, and he has to come out in Australia, which is notoriously difficult. And like you make a little mistake in Australia, and you will hit the wall, and especially on that turn 9 to 10 S's, like they're so fast, and you gotta get it right. And I don't know, just Vettel doesn't understand the car yet. Didn't get a lot of practice one. Didn't get a lot of practice two. Crashed in practice three. Didn't even get like he wasn't
He
even
got one. He
gonna
had one lap on
right.
quali.
Wasn't even gonna get to qualify, and then he got just to do one lap. Um, it's kind of hard to blame him, but at the end of the day, he did crash like a bunch of times, and he went out of the track a bunch of times. Couldn't get their car correctly, couldn't gauge the braking zones correctly.
It
Um,
feels like he was almost in like preseason testing, you know,
yeah,
like making all the mistakes you would make on those sort of like, hey, I ran wide, I went off the track.
hmm
I think obviously because he's trying to get a good result as possible, he's
yeah,
pushing harder than he knows he can, and therefore he's making those mistakes.
yeah,
But I do feel really bad for Sebastian. Obviously,
yeah.
I'm a really big fan
And
of
we
that.
all, I mean, yeah, and we also know that like for Sebastian, it's pretty hard to get used to new cars, and
Yes.
he used to be like a champion on those like smaller, nimbler cars. Like that was like his jam. But ever since then,
Yeah,
he's
if
never
the car
really,
once the cars get heavier,
yeah,
he can't for some
yeah, he's
reason.
never quite been home. And so for them to entirely change the car, and then to tell him like jump in and drive this thing, it's pretty. it's pretty scary. So and especially in a weekend like Australia, like yeah, it's bound to happen. And at the end of the day, they weren't like the worst crashes. Like I mean, like it's costly, yes, but and he didn't finish the race, yes, but I don't know. I don't think it's all that. I don't know, all that terrible. It's just unfortunate for
Yeah, I think it's just unfortunate. But then the question is here, the controversial take:
him.
do you think he'll retire
Oh, I
at
think
the
it's
end of
too
the season?
early. I think it's too early to say. I don't think it could honestly go 50-50. Um, if he keeps having issues and he keeps not being able to bring the results, yeah. But I think he loves driving. I think he still
I think
enjoys
he
it.
loves driving. I think he won't retire. I mean, unless his season goes just
Like
awful.
terrible, yeah.
But I don't predict that to happen. I actually think he's going to have a very solid season. He just needs time with the car. And also, don't let it get to his head.
Yeah.
Because I know that maybe these type of things he will get to his head, and that's when like it spirals down, like when it happened in 2018 when he
Yeah.
crashed in Germany, and then
And
after that
that
it
was
just
the
went
end of that.
downhill.
It was like literally you could pinpoint a moment like in The Simpsons, like this is the moment where like his heart breaks, and that was Vettel in 2018 on Hockenheim in his home, Grand Prix, leading the race, doing the fast, like he's on his way to winning that championship, and I think it was at that moment when he crashed against that wall that like he lost it all. Like he tilted
Yep.
out of this world and like couldn't get it back.
He
Like
hasn't gotten it back since.
yeah,
Like he's
that
really tried, but he
that
can't.
was the point. you can
We can
watch it in
pinpoint it.
slow motion. Yeah,
That's sad. I made myself sad now.
yeah, yeah. It is kind it is kind of sad, but anyways,
Okay.
that's on Vettel.
Next topic, and this is the last topic for the race.
Okay.
Leclerc safety car restart is the only mistake that he made. But like the part I wanted to talk about is that obviously they changed the safety car rules,
Yeah.
where you're no longer allowed to do the Verstappen shenanigans.
Hmm.
We're gonna call the Verstappen shenanigans safety car rule. That's what it's gonna be called now.
Yeah.
Do you like the new change?
I think it's so previously we had said, and I still stand by this, that like it was fine what Verstappen was doing. It was within the
Yeah,
rules. Now I
I think they
understand that,
changed it for safety reasons.
right. The FIA just like the spirit of the rule was not to allow for drivers to do that. Like we always said that like the drivers behind usually were being very generous. Like like Bottas behind Hamilton, he will never have done that, right? Because he was just
Mhm.
like he was nice. But if you don't make a stand on it, then people start taking advantage of that. Like Verstappen was doing, being as close as he could, always being to side. But in reality, if the FIA didn't want that and they want like a more like a fair like sort of safety car restart in which like the car behind is supposed to stay behind the first car, yeah, I'm fine with the change. I have no
Yep.
issues with it.
I think obviously it's a thing of. I think Verstappen doing it to the leader is like a lot of mind games. But for example, I like that type of mind game because he's not breaking any rules. But I think it's a thing that it will trickle down the field, you know?
Hmm.
If like then the people the people in like sixth, seventh place, eighth place, they just start driving
They
next to
just
the
start
other car
like they start doing
and
this.
everybody's just like going back and forth. Like I think that's the reason why like they like, okay, we need to change this because yes,
Mhm.
it's in the rules, but that means that now every single car can do it.
Yeah.
And that's when like it becomes an issue. So I do like the fact that, for example, that Verstappen used to do that because I like the mind game and the pressure, and I like to see the other driver not yield to that pressure. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Like somebody can stand up to that type of thing, and I find it like actually quite remarkable. But on the issue of safety, I don't think that I think that it was good that they like
Yeah.
amended the rule.
Yeah, at least give you some clarity and to make to put clear boundaries on that. I think yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense what they're doing, and it's probably safer for everybody. It also it stops people from maybe getting unfair advantages or like even causing accidents, and making things questionable for others. So no, it's good. I like the change. I'm fine with it.
Okay. Okay, actually, I lied. There's one more topic that we need to talk about the race, which is
Okay.
Alex Albon.
Ah, yes, good, good. I'm happy you brought it up because I
Yes.
was gonna bring it up if you weren't.
Yeah, no, Alex Albon. This is the Albon hour.
Oh, good. I'm glad we're giving him an hour because I've always, since he joined, I've always believed that like he's actually really good. Like he's actually a very fast driver, and
He was just never given the chance to develop.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. And I feel like he understands cars really well. Like he's very well taking. Like I think being in Williams is the perfect spot for him at the moment because he obviously, they prefer Perez on Red Bull, which is understandable. But I think now he can help with the development of the car of the Williams at the moment and still show how good he is. Because I think that's his strong forte. He's really good at understanding the car. He's very organized. He thinks about it really well. And from the few snippets that I've seen in Drive to Survive, he really understands well like what is going on in the car, so he can really help the team. And it's paying off. I think he's got a good car, and this race was really good for him. I thought it was like a really good performance. One of the best ones of all everybody on this weekend was just Albon being there out of nowhere. With like he carried those tires for like
The whole race.
50, yeah, like from beginning to finish. And he kept it up the pace. Like, like other people like Alonso or like Ocon or other people that or Magnussen, they couldn't do that even
Yeah.
with the same
With
tires
the safety cars and
and all of those things. Yeah, and Albon never pit, but he still stayed there, reliably making time, holding Ocon behind even after the safety car restart, and kept the position, and ultimately it got him a point. It's like it took George like 2 or 3 years to get that point for him. But Albon literally just like on like his third weekend on Williams. I mean, I think it's very impressive. It's very impressive that he managed to do that with such a like risky strategy, you could say, or like such a bold strategy. But it paid off. I mean, and you need a good driver to be able to deliver on those things. It's something like maybe a Hamilton would have done, back in the day, if he was in a worse car or something. So yeah, no, very very good performance for him. Very happy that he was able to get that last point. Um, so yeah,
you
that's
can like contrast him to like Latifi as well. Like
oh yeah.
I'm just a very big critic of Latifi. I think like he's
Yeah,
the one driver this year that needs to
needs
eventually
to
leave Formula One.
yeah make
Um,
little way.
I think every year there's like a one that's like just leave. We don't need you here. For me, last year it was Giovinazzi,
Giovinazzi, yeah.
uh, and Giovinazzi over Latifi. Obviously, and my reasoning for Giovinazzi was like the same thing. Like Vettel and Kimi Raikkonen were together in Ferrari,
Mhm.
and then Vettel was like you could tell Vettel is better than Kimi.
Yeah.
Like the whole time that they were teammates in Ferrari, like Vettel was just the guy. It's like he's the one
Racing
that's
Kimi.
gonna win us the championship. Kimi was solid, but not better than Vettel.
Hmm.
Then Kimi goes to Alpha, and then Charles Leclerc comes into Ferrari.
Yeah.
And then Charles, you can tell he's definitely better than Vettel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then like you have Charles better than Vettel, Vettel better than Kimi. And then when they're in Alfa Romeo, Kimi and Giovinazzi, Kimi is beating Giovinazzi every single weekend.
And the guy
Every single weekend. So like
and
you can't tell me that like
that
the
is
guy is
better,
the guy is younger, supposed to be hungrier and faster
yeah.
because he has like better reflexes and like just like the hunger for wins, but he just never did anything on that Alfa Romeo.
Yeah,
So
plus Kimi was like halfway retired, like halfway, like the guy wasn't even paying attention. Like a lot of times, he like literally would just be like looking at his phone and crashing like into like the back of people. But no, like actually Kimi like just like really random incidents where like he wasn't looking ahead, and he would like crash out, and he was still beating Giovinazzi. He was still going faster.
yep.
So yeah, it was unfortunate for Giovinazzi. What is interesting is that Bottas came in, and I think now you can see the true pace of the alphas Because last
Yeah.
year you couldn't see it because Kimi wasn't trying and you had Giovinazzi. But now that this guy is there, it's like damn, like those cars actually were competitive all along. You know, back in the days of Leclerc was making it competitive too.
Yeah.
They're back to getting like consistent points, which is good. It's like
Yes.
and it speaks well of Bottas as well. Bottas always been fast. He just
Yeah.
wasn't as fast as Hamilton.
I I think Bottas has always been fast. I think the issue with Bottas is his racecraft is not very good.
Yeah, and his
He
defending is
he
very
he
weak.
cannot overtake all that well, and he definitely cannot defend.
Yeah,
So it's like he can be really fast, but then when there's a car in front or behind him, it like now all
when
of
it
a sudden it's
matters,
an
you
issue.
can't.
Yeah.
And this is something that like Hamilton that like you need to be the world champion. Like everybody always says like Hamilton was very uh like oh he's just in the best car whatever, right? But when the moments came, Hamilton had to deliver and he did it. He needed to like Brazil last year was a beautiful example of that, where he like went from 20 to first. Nobody else could have done it. No,
Yep.
no, no. There, like that was like literally the drive of a champion, like Bottas said. Like that's right there is what you need. And unfortunately, Bottas just didn't have that. Like I mean, like you know, there were times where like he was supposed to try to overtake somebody, couldn't overtake even guys in the midfield.
Yep.
Many times, like he would be stuck at ninth or eighth for like many more laps than like Hamilton would have taken. So that was his issue. But yes, he's always been fast. He's always been kind of consistent. Maybe not as much as like a Carlos Sainz, but he's always like finishes races. He doesn't crash a lot.
Mhm.
So yeah, and it's good to see him
Yep.
on a competitive car that he's working for.
However, coming back into topic, this was the Alex Albon hour.
Well, we try, but you know,
It's like the contrast also with it, it's okay. The
yeah.
contrast with Latifi is that I think like I'm sorry about Latifi, you needs to get out.
I think yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. He's like a second behind Albon. Like in every race, his last. He's on Williams and he's like providing them funding, but I don't know if you need that. And I think this year has been so costly for Williams already that it's like breaking even maybe on Latifi. So no, I think it is time for Latifi to move on. He had a good shot, a good couple of years, 3 years in Formula One. It's not, a lot of people. I mean, it happens that you just come in 1 year, like Mazepin, and then you go out the next. He had
Yep.
three good years, good fun. He was never gonna be a world champion. He was never gonna be anything more than a Williams driver, in my opinion.
Yep.
So he did his stint. We can let a new generation. There's plenty of good drivers out there still. So,
Yeah.
and new rookies.
Okay. Okay. I have here other topics of conversation that go a little bit out of order from what happened on the weekend. But what are your overall thoughts with the new Australian Grand Prix layout?
I like it. It's kind of sad because I love the old layout as well. Those like to set of the two chicanes, the second chicane that they took out. Uh, I mean, I liked it, but at the end of the day, the car seems like they race better like this, and there's more passing opportunities.
Mhm.
It's still a beautiful track. I mean, oh, by the way, I did hear that like this was like the most attended sports event in
In
Australian
Australian
history.
history. Yeah.
So that's really good.
Crazy.
Like the yeah, the fan interaction there. It's. I mean, it's a lovely track. I was happy with it. My nostalgia makes me feel like I had more fun racing on the other one, but it's probably the right thing for the
Also,
cars.
for some reason, I think they're racing at like different time that they usually do. Like the sun seems to be setting, which
Yeah.
I don't think that was ever an issue back in the day.
No, I think
Uh,
Australia, at least in the game, always when you're racing, it gets to evening time and like it starts like the
starts
sun starts
happening.
getting.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I never remember that being an issue, but that's
No,
interesting.
I think it's always was, and also like it's always been at midnight our time, so like
Yeah,
I think they remain around that time.
yeah. Okay. The
Yeah.
other topic of conversation
Mhm.
that I had about the race overall is that in comparison with Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, where do you rank this like overall race on? Better than any of them, or
No,
just the third best?
uh, the third best so far. Like I would give you like a 7 out of 10, like I said at the beginning. I don't know. I don't know what I would give Saudi Arabia. I'm kind of past it at this point.
Yeah, like it already passed the emotion and the adrenaline.
Yeah, but
But you
no,
don't think it was better than any of those races?
no, because those had like a lot of passing, a lot of interaction between like first and second. This one, it was like kind of Leclerc, not crash or spin or his car
Yeah.
go out. That was kind of like the tension that I got, and there were like a lot of action, like in the back, where like it was fun enough to watch. But not super like relevant, like not like the guys in the back were kind of just fighting for like those final few points. It was kind of fun that the Mercs got some points, and it was good to
Mhm.
see the McLarens a little bit back again. But they didn't really get a lot of action. They were just solid like 5, 6 like the entire weekend. So
Okay, so
uh,
with that it comes
solid.
like the question, like like sometimes, like for example, I think like well, I always compare it to like League of Legends, for example, where like you had Faker being like the best player, and every time that you went to see him, it was just a delight watching Faker own everybody else. Same in basketball, Michael Jordan. Like every
Mhm.
Michael Jordan game that you watch, like the guy is gonna deliver like a show where he's gonna dominate the other
Yeah,
guy, and it's beautiful to see. But I feel like in Formula One, that doesn't translate very well when you have one guy dominating something like for so long, or even if it's just the one off. So in
mhm.
this case, we had Leclerc just own and drive the race of his lifetime, like, and the entire weekend, like pole position, fastest lap, wins the race, leads every
Every lap.
single lap of the race. Like even when he pits, he has such advantage over the second place, then he comes out ahead.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like utter domination from Charles Leclerc, and just beautiful, like how he fucking owned that entire race. But we don't find it as like, oh,
uh,
what a beautiful race,
yeah.
It's more exciting when like you have a fight for the lead
Yeah.
rather than like complete and utter domination. So why that doesn't that translate well? Like you're seeing like a guy perform at its very best, nobody can match him, and it's just not as exciting.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I mean, racing is like you want to see like the close action. I mean, it is like these vehicles and the passes. We'll get more of that, but I think at the same time, it is. I mean, it is how it goes sometimes. I mean, like we're living in a very spoiled time at the moment of Formula One, where like every weekend there's a lot of action. But you go back like 3 years ago, or like there wasn't that much action. It was a lot of like Hamilton leading and winning, right?
2017 in the Australian Grand Prix, there were only two overtakes the entire race.
Oof. That those were our times. That's what we've had to deal with. So no, I mean, I think there's races every now and then where like somebody can just dominate. I think there'll be more action. They're making the cars better, and like the teams, even I mean, you could argue that Red Bull's still the better team. It's just so happened that like Charles was in a better track for him this weekend. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm totally fine with that. It's not as entertaining, but like every now and then you need races where like yeah, it's not as exciting. So that when like the exciting races come, you're like pretty hyped about it too. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so with that, we are pretty much out of the stuff that we need to talk about the race, and we get to the section, the one and only, the most awaited one,
The
complaints.
oh, the complaints, not the rankings. Okay.
No, not the rankings.
All right. All
The
right. Well,
complaints. I think you said you had a complaint at the beginning. I forgot
yes,
what it was.
yes, no, about the racer of the day,
Oh, the
which
driver of the day
yes,
complaint.
I hate that they do that. Well, you know what? I like that they have like a voting system for like the people watching. I like that because I want to be engaged, and I think it is fun to vote for that. I don't. It doesn't make sense to
Have you ever
me.
voted for the driver of the day?
Yeah, I actually do
How do
it.
you vote? I've never voted for
You
driver
gotta
of
do
the day.
F. It's really easy actually. You just go to f1.com/vote, and literally it's like it shows you the 20 and you just click on the one that you like and boop, you're counted, right?
Okay.
The issue that I have with that is that like it happens in the middle of the race. Like you have to vote in the middle of the race and they close it as soon as the race is over. And that doesn't make sense because like a lot of times it's like a 1-2 battle. What happens if it's a 1-2 battle and like there's like two racers like obviously head to head? You don't know who you're gonna vote for until the race ends, right? Or a lot of times like it's happened a lot where like I'm like, oh, this guy is going so well, and all of a sudden something happens in the last like 2 or 3 laps, and like he loses a bunch of positions, and he still gets racer of the day, and it's kind of like, yeah, but had I known that like Ricciardo was gonna pass him, I would have voted for Ricciardo instead. So they should like they shouldn't close the polls for the voting for the racer of the race before the race is over or like as the race ends. They should give like people like maybe like 5 to 10 minutes. And thank
They should
God,
do it on the podium ceremony or something. I don't know.
yeah, or something like that. And then like thank God that like they're not doing that shit that they were doing last year, where
Oh,
they
that
like
they are broadcasting an interview while the guy is
what the guys like
driving.
still like sweating like out of the victory is like congratulating the team, and the usual is like Charles Leclerc, driver of the day. How do you feel? It's kind of like, bro, let the guys breathe. Like they don't need to be broadcasted every single time. It was so cringy and like I
I
felt
hated it, but
yeah
people liked it. People really liked hearing from the driver. But I hated it. I hated that interview. It seems so like you said, very cringe. Like
yeah.
somebody that you're just driving and all of a sudden somebody that you don't expect is coming into your radio. You are the driver of the day. How do you feel? And it's like, oh, thanks guys. Oh,
Yeah,
and
it's
then
like,
like that person is then the person that is interviewing them is also trying to have a conversation with them. It's just like, oh.
and you're like trying, like they're still driving a car and like trying to answer questions. So it's like it's not easy. And the other thing is that like they always give the same answer. It's like, yeah, a hard fought race, but I'm glad it makes it. But it's like so hard because you're like trying to like say what you did in the race, but it never worked. It was just really it was really bad. I hated seeing that. So I'm happy they don't do it anymore. But they still gotta they gotta fix the polling. The polling needs to close after the race. You gotta give like people
Yeah,
like
I don't know.
five to
At
ten
least during the
minutes.
interview or something,
Yeah.
like give it an extra 2 minutes. The guys have to go around the track
Put a
and then
little
be like,
timer on the bottom so
yeah,
people know. Like vote for now. Poll closes in 10 minutes or something.
yeah, or like they have the countdown there, and they're like, oh, I gotta vote for,
For whoever I
yeah,
thought it was the best. Because now the race is over. Now I can do it.
yeah,
I mean, because the poll opens in like I don't know, like middle of the race, and like people are already voting for like Verstappen, and it's like the race hasn't ended, guys. What are we doing? And you can change your vote after you vote either. So like as far as I know, so yeah, that's my complaint for the week. It's a good thing that you brought that up.
okay. My complaints are two. So usually I have way more, but this time I only have two complaints. And this one is one that we have been talking about in previous podcasts is how are you able to keep your fastest lap if there are yellow flags on the track?
Yeah.
And I'm talking about Q2. Sergio Perez set his fastest lap under yellow flag conditions
Again.
and nothing happened. No warning, no time deleted, no penalty, no nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, why does this happen? We know that there are yellow flags.
Mhm.
Like, let's keep it consistent,
You know what I hate about this also is that like there's no explanation, and this is the type of thing that like the entire Formula One broadcasting like people they don't say anything about, and so since nobody talks about it, it never gets like
it never gets brought up like as an issue,
right. And it's kind of like it's agreed. It's almost like it's agreed that like they're not gonna talk about it because they don't want to cause a controversy. That like they don't want to say like the FIA is doing
They don't
something
want to
wrong.
stir the pot.
Exactly.
Maybe they
Uh,
can't, probably. It's like in their contract. It's like, oh, we're the commentators. We cannot talk about shit about the sport we're commentating. We're
right.
gonna lose our jobs.
And so if they don't say it, the fans don't know it, and it keeps the sport sort of in like this, like always in like this great state of like the rules. Whereas we that pay attention are like, why is he keeping those laps? Like, sure, now it's not relevant now, but like it's gonna happen in the future where like the first guy puts his, and it does happen, like he puts his fastest lap or like a few of the fastest laps under yellow conditions, and then he loses that time afterwards, and maybe even gets a fucking penalty for it.
Penalty, yeah. Or
Yeah,
a worst case scenario, the yellow flags are there for the safety of the people on track.
yeah,
There's somebody on the track that doesn't need to be there. There's a car, there's a driver, there's a marshal, there's something going on, and
yeah.
there's a reason there's a yellow flag. You need to slow down.
Hmm.
And there's gonna come a time where like the
Somebody doesn't.
drivers doesn't slow down, they lose control of the car, and then a worse accident happens.
Yeah,
And it's like, why doesn't this get enforced? And then we can see a track record of the FIA just sweeping it under the rug, and every
yeah,
time it gets brought up, like they just keep it hush hush.
yeah,
So
exactly. No, yeah, and again, it reminds me a lot. I mean, and this is a very long discussion, so we don't gotta get too much into it. But of the ending of the season last year, where like we were so angry about it because it's like this is the most fuckery I've ever seen in any sport at the end of the season. Disgusting, unjust. It doesn't make any sense how they banned the rules the way they did them, and they literally took the championship from a driver. But then nobody talked about it. Absolutely nobody talked about it. None of the broadcasting people talked about it. No drivers were interviewed about it. The most you heard was like George Russell sending a tweet, and then Ricardo after the race in his radio, you could hear like, "I'm glad I'm not part of that, of all that, because
mhm.
like something messed up happened," right? That's all you heard, and then everybody kept it quiet. Everybody kept it hush hush. None of the commentators wanted to talk about it. None of the
And
podcasts
when we
talked
mean
about it.
everybody, we don't mean like the fans. We mean
Yeah,
like the media, like the people that like make the news and like inform people about Formula One. They kept it so like passive.
yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, this happened, and we think it's unfair, but that's what it is. And they just moved on. And I'm like, this should be like,
It should be like world news, or I don't know. It was the championship final, and they broke the rules in order to give it to another driver for the purpose of entertainment. Never has it been so blatant that they did their in purpose, because they obviously did it in purpose. Michael Masi literally let four cars pass by to Verstappen so that Verstappen could pass Hamilton, because they wanted that like last lap fighting action or whatever. But it
yeah,
was against the rules, or like they were very flexible with the rules, to say the least.
yes. So
And
obviously
like
that is
all of
the,
that,
go ahead.
sorry, and all of that nobody talked about. They were like, yeah, Verstappen, ooh, everybody's celebrating the
Yeah,
youngest champion.
even Formula One, like Formula One is like, oh, the youngest, oh, the Max Verstappen beats Lewis Hamilton, and it's like the story about like how we have this guy that finally beat Mercedes and all that.
Yeah,
And I'm like, but that's not what happened, bro.
yeah,
You guys bent the rules so you can like show this storyline,
yeah.
and
And
and it
then they
just
just run
sucks.
off, with the
And it's like,
story.
oh,
That's
and
like,
now and now, oh, now new season, new Formula One, new cars.
yeah,
Like that never happened.
exactly. They just showed all the clips of like Verstappen when he was a young kid, and that was the story. Like, oh, the young new kid, Verstappen wins the
Yep.
championship, but like nobody talks about how they stole it from Hamilton. Like no, like nobody actually says that. Nobody in the media ever like was like, how how did that happen? Like, why is that happen? Why can that happen in the sport? The sport, you shouldn't be able to produce that on a sport, and certainly like can make a precedent like that. And then Mercedes, eventually they retracted their own complaint. Hamilton said it was fine, and everything
Yep.
was
It's
swept
like,
under the
okay,
rug.
now we just need to move on and whatever.
And in
But
my opinion,
you
it's the
shouldn't move on
most
from it. Yeah.
it's the most controversial thing that's ever happened in Formula One that nobody talks about, and that no, you won't hear people talking about it for like 10 years. I guarantee it, because
Yep.
it's still that fresh. But at some point,
And then
it's gonna
people
it's
always
gonna
feel like,
break.
oh, you're like, oh, you talk about it, but because you're a Hamilton fan,
Yeah,
like, oh, you're a Max Verstappen hater, and it's like it has nothing to do with Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen. It has to do with the bending of the rules.
Is with the integrity of the sport.
Yes, they
Of
fucked the sport up. It
yes,
has nothing to do like, oh, Lewis Hamilton lost. I don't give a shit if Lewis Hamilton lost or if Max Verstappen won. I don't give a shit about that. It's like,
or if Hamilton deserved
yeah,
it, or if he, or if Verstappen is better and like he
yeah,
had at that point
yeah,
raced better or whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is that like the rules were bent for entertainment and favor a driver to win a championship that like it shouldn't, that in a way in which it shouldn't happen. Verstappen could have still passed Hamilton. He could have cleared out the blue flags. He could have still gotten, I mean, and until that point, it would have been like a 50-50. But then passes Hamilton, weaves around, nobody says anything, keeps the position, and we're just supposed to like say like, oh well, that's it. I guess Verstappen won it. No, I've never seen like a more disgusting race of Formula One, and it tarnished that entire season for me. Like,
yep. It's almost like a Game of Thrones. It's like I watch all of Game of Thrones and I'm like, oh, this is a beautiful show. And then I watch the last season and it's like, oh, Game of Thrones, let's sweep it under the rug. Like
yeah.
it never happened in the history of our culture. Like Game of Thrones was like the best TV show of all time for like a period, and then like it ended, and we were like, "Oh shit, that ended like that. Let's not talk about it ever again." It felt
Yeah.
like that. It's like we had 2021, which was an amazing season that
Yeah.
you can rewatch over and over again. It's like, wow, every single race they're just toe to toe, fighting for the lead. Every single race crashing onto each other.
Yeah.
There's like
Very
people like
intense.
sabotaging each other, like just crazy. You have people brake testing each other.
Oh
The
yeah.
like
The
just the
entire
craziest things
book of
happening
yeah, crazy
up until like the
crazy
very
things.
last race, and then like the last race happens in the last lap, and I'm like, I don't want to watch the 2021 season ever again. It's just
Yeah.
like it's like you ruined the entire
Like
thing.
the entire intensity of the season, you wanted that big climax and it was just like taken away from us. Like
Yep.
that's how I feel. And I feel like anybody that goes back and watches that season with objective eyes is gonna feel that way. It's gonna feel like, oh, that's how it ended. Like they fixed it for Verstappen. I mean, not to say that Verstappen didn't deserve it. He couldn't close the gap to Hamilton on the entire race, but he had that safety car. Lucky for him at the end. But then they just literally gave it to him. Just literally gave it to him, and then allowed him to weave, allowed him to keep that position. Hamilton was like on all tires. It was I don't know. Again, I could talk about this for hours of like the different things that happened in that race that and in that entire season that were like completely bonkers. But we can call it there. We can
Yeah, but
we,
so
we
the
can say that.
complaining, if we go back to like the yellow flag thing,
Mhm.
is the same thing. It's like it's not as big as what happened last season,
Yeah.
but is it just keeps setting precedents. And like I know there's small ones and they just sweep them under the rug. It's like
Yeah.
these are part of the rules. You cannot just get a guy or any driver, and it's been happening for the past races as well, that like there's yellow flag conditions and then drivers are setting their fastest times.
Mhm.
It's like it's there for a reason, because at some point something bad's gonna happen, and then like you're gonna be like, oh, this never happened before.
And
It's
we,
like, bro, we've been saying it every single time that it occurs,
yeah,
and
every
you
single.
just keep it under
Last
the
weekend
rug. Like
there was a double yellow flag. Albon on the field. Nobody got a penalty.
a stroll on the field.
I thought it was Albon on the last lap.
It was because of the Stroll and Albon incident, but yeah, I don't know which one was
I thought, because I thought Albon had to pull over because he like
it.
destroyed
Yeah,
his front tire. Um,
yeah,
it
one
doesn't
of the
matter.
yeah.
Yes, but there was a yellow, double yellow, and then there were still drivers setting like their fastest times. Just give everybody a penalty. I mean, that's what should happen. You setting a really bad precedent by not allowing or by not punishing drivers for that type of behavior. So yeah, we'll keep saying it, and we've been predicting a lot of stuff in this thing. I hope that that's not what we're predicting here,
Yeah,
because like
yeah, I
it
don't
could
want
be
to say negative.
very
Yeah.
dangerous. Yeah.
So that was my complaint, and that was my first complaint.
You said you had two, right?
I had two complaints, so I'm going
Okay.
now into my second complaint.
All right. What's the
My
complaint?
second complaint on the Australian Grand Prix that you probably noticed, but I'm gonna bring now to light, is that you had the main DRS on the main straight, and then the second DRS didn't aid the car behind if they were overtaken on the first turn. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, you.
So if
Uh,
you are the car
okay.
like in front on the main
Uh-huh.
straight, and then the car behind you is coming with DRS, they overtake you onto that first turn,
Yeah.
but then on the second DRS zone, the car that now just overtook you has DRS, and you in
Mhm.
the back, you don't have it.
Okay.
Because the detection point is on the main straight.
Mhm.
When like you made the overtake, you are not clear of the car that you're overtaking yet. Therefore, you get double DRS. Um,
Yeah.
so my complaint there is that although, yeah, it is nice that you added DRS zones to the Australian Grand Prix, the idea was for it to aid the racing. And although the racing was better, once a driver made an overtake on turn one,
Mhm.
the car that just got overtook didn't have a way to fight back into the next DRS zone.
I say no. I'm gonna disagree with you on this one. I think.
I think the DRS detection point should be after the turn, not on the main straight. That
I
way, if you get overtaken, you can still fight back for that position.
I think maybe it should be closer to the turn, maybe.
Like
But
that, if you look at races like Saudi Arabia, in the last turn, right, you
mhm,
have the DRS zone, and then we had the DRS chicken with Leclerc and Verstappen. But like you're coming onto DRS, and then you can overtake that car, and then once you're coming into the main straight, the car that just got overtaken has now DRS and can fight back, and they can fight each other. If you
yeah,
look at Bahrain, it's also the same thing. You have turn one, people use
yeah,
the DRS, and then on the next DRS zone, even though you were just overtaken, you have DRS to fight back for that position, right?
yeah.
Uh, that wasn't the case
Sometimes,
in Australia.
sometimes,
Yeah, sometimes I know it's not like a black and white thing. I'm just saying
yeah.
in Australia, I was hoping like, oh, he just got overtaken in turn one, but now because he's on the second DRS zone, he's gonna get DRS to be able to fight back, and that just never happened. So it's just like a little complaint. I didn't like it because I wanted to see closer racing, but it just meant that like whoever overtook on turn one was gonna get DRS on the second zone, and therefore like they would be
But
even farther ahead.
I mean, yes and no. I feel like so. Like I feel like there is races in which I feel like it matters, and like you could see that being an issue. But I don't know. For the most part, I'm like, I think it's fine. I like that when you pass somebody, that sometimes that you get the DRS afterwards. I think it feels okay. Like it feels like, yeah, it's still a way for the driver that was behind to get past the slower car. And also, I mean, I don't know. If you're racing and you're behind on the first turn, you can strategize to try to take over after on the second DRS zone, kind of like in Bahrain, kind of like what Charles
Yes.
Leclerc was doing. Uh, so I don't know, because you can also like try to be slower on the main straight and then try to pass afterwards. That's usually how you do it in the game. Actually, conventionally speaking, you will try to get closer on the first, and then on the second one you're still behind, but you get that run into turn three, and then you're able to make the pass. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I could see it going either way. To me, it's never been an issue. To me, I always just thought it was more of a sort of track specific type of thing, where like the measurement of the DRS was just like it was placed like that because it had to be placed like that.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know. I could see it going either way. You know.
Okay. But yeah, that was my second complaint. It wasn't as
Okay.
big as the first one, but just something that annoyed me. But
Okay.
it doesn't have to be, it's not like the greatest complaint ever, just like a little annoyance.
A little annoyance. Got
Yeah.
it.
All right. So with that in mind, that's it. That's pretty much everything we needed to talk about in the podcast. We can now go into the Formula One World
Ranking.
Championship over here and then
All
start
right.
ranking all the drivers.
All right.
Uh,
I'll
so we
try.
can start from the
All
top
right.
of the list.
All right. I'll try not to
You
make
give
it
me your
too long.
rankings.
All right. Let's start with Leclerc. Leclerc,
Charles Leclerc.
easily 5 out of 5. Had the best weekend imaginable. You can't ask for better from a driver, from a weekend, from a car. You know.
Carlos Sainz.
Sainz. It's difficult because we talked about how much he struggled, and it's kind of hard to gauge how much it was him, how much it was the car. At the end of the day, I think the incident that like led him to be out of the race was his fault. He overestimated and he was not driving, not thinking correctly, in my opinion. I'm gonna give him a 1.5.
1.5.
Yeah, it's probably the lowest I've given so far, but
No,
yeah.
I think we gave a 0.5 on the first.
Oh, to Latifi, yeah, who crashed twice on the weekend. Yeah, all right, that was worse.
Verstappen.
Verstappen was doing okay. He did as good as he could until he ended out of the race. He didn't have the fastest pace imaginable. It just seems like he was reliably faster than Perez. I'm gonna give him a, I don't know, between a 4 and a 3.5. Probably a 4.
Perez.
Perez was not very impressive. I don't know. He ended up second, so you can't complain too much because he did what he needed to do, and he passed the Mercedes and he stayed ahead. But he didn't look like the entire weekend didn't look like he was like all that much faster than Verstappen. He didn't do anything. I'll give him a 4. I'll give him 4 to be nice.
Same as Verstappen.
Yeah, I think so. It'll be weird to give him less, but it would also be weird to give Verstappen
It
less.
seems like Perez actually matched Verstappen's like pace throughout the weekend.
Yeah, he stayed close enough. And at some point of qualifying, it almost looked like Perez could have taken it, but
Yeah. Hamilton.
Hamilton did well,
He got
but
screwed over by the safety car.
he did get screwed over by the safety car, and he was actually I could have seen him fighting closer to Perez at the end there. Unfortunately, that was not the case, and he got kind of stuck behind Russell too with fresher tires. I'm gonna give him. I'm also gonna give. I could give him a 4 or a 3.5. That is the thing. I'm gonna give Russell a 4 because I think Russell did really good. He didn't out qualify Hamilton, but he
He
kept the
got
place.
lucky with the safety car, but
He got lucky with the safety car, and he did as good as he could have in the weekend. So 4. But I think I'm also gonna give Hamilton a 4. I think Hamilton was, just kind of unlucky, but his racing was
yeah.
still fine, and he was fighting well with Perez.
Norris.
So it's kind of the same thing for Norris and Ricciardo. They didn't make a lot of passes, but they did get some passes. They stayed faster than the other. I'll give Norris a 4 as well. And I'm going to give Ricciardo a 3.5.
You know that they told Ricardo that he wasn't allowed to overtake Norris.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Norris was like
Oh,
had
I
an
didn't
issue
know.
with the car, and then they told him like, "Hey, just be careful. Like, we're gonna keep the cars as they are."
Oh,
But yeah, just keep position. So
weird. That makes me kind of rethink, but also I didn't see him like trying to make a move. He wasn't going that much faster, and he was out qualified. I'm still gonna give him a 3.5, even though it was his home race.
Alonso.
Oh, also an interesting one. So he crashed out in qualifying, which may or may not have been his fault. And then in the race, he did try a risky strategy, but then went on different tires, and then just started going backwards. Maybe he was driving too heavy or not taking care of the things. They all kept saying like, oh, he's got the pace, and he's when he was fifth place, he's like he should be fighting for even more. But I never really saw it. I'm gonna give him a 2.5. It could have been a 3 if he had maintained position at the end, but he didn't, and he just looked like he could have done a lot better all throughout.
Ocon.
Ocon did good, and he ended up with points, right? He ended up
Yeah, I think so.
with the most points ahead of Norris.
Best of the rest.
I think he might have been. I can't remember if he was, or I think he might have been behind Ricardo. He was either ahead or behind the McLarens.
So Ocon ended the race seventh behind the McLaren.
Behind the McLarens. He drove well. He finished. He finished the qualifying. He got some points. I'm gonna give him a 3.5. But
Bottas.
he was never faster than Alonso per se. He just was in the right place at the right time. Bottas good. I'm gonna give him a 4. Good, really good. Outperforming the car, staying solid with the strategy, and making passes, making Gasly making mistakes, which is kind of rare. So good.
Joe.
He ended up with no points. He didn't get qualify. He didn't qualify his teammate, and also he ended up like 12. I think he had a chance at making
He
some
ended up
passes.
11. Like
Oh, because he was
yeah.
on Stroll there, but he couldn't make that pass on Stroll. I'm gonna give him a 3. Solid performance, but no problem. 3. A 3 is fine. 3 is fine.
Magnussen.
I wish it would have been better. And there was a point where I thought like, oh, he could make it happen. Maybe if he gets lucky with a safety car, but then he pitted, tried to overtake, but there wasn't more in the car. Unfortunately, just looked like the car wasn't that fast, but he didn't do bad. And I think he did better than Nick the entire weekend, anyways. So I'm gonna give him a 3. I think he's middle of the road. Not the best, but not the worst.
Schumacher.
He ended up ahead, right? He ended up ahead
Yeah, one position ahead of Magnussen.
of Magnussen, but he still didn't get points.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give him a 2.5.
Sebastian Vettel.
It's hard to say. I'm gonna give him the candidate set the 0.5. Not that it's all his fault. Not that it's not excuse and that like he just hasn't has enough time to practice. But if you see that person driving, no matter who it is, you can't give him higher than like 0.5. Like he crashed on practice. He didn't qualify particularly well, and then he crashed in his race completely unprompted. His own mistake. So
Lance Stroll.
probably a 2. Because even though he finished the race, he wasn't fighting for a lot, and he crashed on his own on Q1. No, maybe a 1.5. I think a 1.5 is called for.
Albon.
Albon, great. I'll give him a 4.5. I would have given him the 5 out of 5 if he had finished the 7th, but
Oh.
or if he had finished higher than 10th. But 4.5, I think, is a very good weekend for him. It's not like he qualified particularly high.
You think that Leclerc deserved driver of the day, or you think Albon deserved?
Oh no, I think Leclerc for sure. I mean, there's no question about it, in my mind. But I think Albon being so good, he did well, but he got kind of lucky with the safety car. He just made it work, and he remained with the position, but it was kind of luck at the end. I don't know if he would have been able to make all those passes, to 10th place from like
Without the safety car.
yeah. But he maintained it. So good. I'll give him a 4.5.
Latifi.
Latifi crashing qualifying and then didn't do anything in the race. I'll give him like a 2.
Gasly.
Gasly actually did good, but then he made a mistake and lost the position at the end. Like he went on the grass, and ultimately it could have been worse. His driving, his qualifying wasn't particularly good or impressive. I'm gonna give him a 3. I think a 3 is good enough for him. Even though it could have been higher, but like that mistake was kind of a little shunt there.
And Yuki.
I'll give him a 2. He was not a headline. This guy, like he just wasn't anywhere.
Okay, so with that in mind, we have the winner of the race, Charles.
Mhm.
Right? We have on second position Albon,
But
and then you have 5-way tie for the third position in the podium of the Formula One World Drivers Championship. You have Verstappen,
Mhm.
Perez, Hamilton, Russell, and Norris, actually a 6-way tie, and Bottas. Who gets the podium?
Oof, I don't know. Okay, okay. Same again from the beginning.
So there's both Red Bulls, right?
Yes, both Red Bulls.
Verstappen and Perez. It's
Yes.
both Mercedes,
Hmm.
Hamilton and Russell. And then you have Norris and Bottas.
I guess I'm gonna go with track position on this, just to be kind of fair. So I'm only thinking whether I should give Bottas more for like being better, that like outperforming the car a little bit. I'm gonna give it to Perez first, then
Perez gets third.
yes, then Russell, then Hamilton,
Okay.
probably um let me see, probably Bottas, then Norris. No, probably Norris than Bottas, because Norris at the end of the day he out qualified Ricciardo and he also ended up higher. So
And Verstappen.
I'm Verstappen last.
Damn, Verstappen losing points in all the championships here.
Yeah. Yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then for 9th and 10th position, you have a 2-way tie. How convenient.
Mhm.
Between Daniel Ricciardo and Esteban Ocon.
Um. Well, Ocon out race his teammate and got good points. He couldn't get past Albon though, which is kind of strange to me. That like if you're behind Albon, you're in eighth place and you can't pass him. You're telling me that like him on older tires would have beaten you? Like it's a little bizarre, especially because he was in such a fast car, the Alpines. So I'm gonna give it to Ricardo and Ocon last.
Okay, so that's our top 10.
Yes.
So last thing we got to talk about here is Imola,
Oh, okay. Yeah, just
next weekend.
I guess we can talk about that next week. I mean, there's a week in between, so we can always talk
Yeah,
about the hype. But I'm pretty hyped for it.
there's
I
a
think
sprint race.
yes, I think it's gonna be oh, there's a sprint race in this.
Mhm.
Oh, well, we can talk about that next week for sure. But I think it's gonna be a Ferrari. A Ferrari 1-2 again. I sort of smell that, and I think this time I'm gonna lean towards Leclerc. It's a little bit early to make predictions, but that's my first sort of sense of what's gonna happen. It should, like I said last weekend, this was easy money, Australia for Ferrari, and it kind of was.
Mhm.
Sainz fucked it up, but the Ferraris were certainly fast. So I'm gonna say that the same thing for Imola. It's more turny. I could see the Red Bulls being competitive as well, but for now, I think Ferraris are favored, and I'm predicting another Leclerc victory.
Leclerc victory in Italy.
Yes, he also performed so good for Italians. Like he's doing the Italians good. So so yeah.
All right.
All
So
right.
that's it. We finished.
Very good. Thanks everybody for watching. We appreciate any disagreements in the comments. And yeah,
These are our
see you,
hot takes.
see you next time.
Peace.